Welcome to a brand new chess video. In this video, I'm bringing you the best trap I've ever seen in my life to win in just 8 moves. You're probably familiar with the missile trap that occurs in the Scandinavian defense. We featured it on the channel before and you've always loved it. So now we're going to review it in depth here on the digital board so it's crystal clear. Look, what we have on a screen is the Scandinavian defense. The normal thing here is to capture the pawn and have them recapture with the queen. Here, up to this point, everything would be normal for the black pieces, but of course, we're not going to play their game. Instead, we'll set up the missile trap, which is knight f3. This is called the Tennyson Gambit, and it's a super effective gambit. Check it out, okay? We're giving away the pawn on the first move, or rather, on the second. And they're also attacking our knight. That's why Black will think, oh my god, what a terrible player. I'm going to finish him off in just a few moves. But watch out, because here we're going to continue with our plan. We have to move the knight, yes, because it's being attacked by the pawn. So where's this knight going to go? Here, the queen captures it. Here would be interesting, but my favorite is here, knight g5. And this is where we're going to set up the missile trap. Look, here many people say, oh, this knight is annoying me. I'll kick it out. Wait, here, you're losing this pawn right here. Therefore, you can't kick it out just here. You have to first defend that extra d4 pawn you have. How do you defend it? Well, the normal thing, and I'm sure you're all thinking it, is okay, I'll develop this knight, and while developing, I'll defend the d5 pawn. So far, everything's going according to plan. How do we continue to crush them and spring the missile trap on them? Well, first, we're going to play a simple move, d3. Why three? Well, it's a psychological track. Here, opponents think, I have an extra pawn, so I don't want them to capture it. Instead, if I capture it, notice that after the exchanges, it's important to take with the bishop. Black, 1, has an extra pawn, and 2, they've gotten rid of that middle pawn that seemed easy to recover. So they're feeling comfortable with an extra pawn. Now they say, okay, I have the extra pawn. What am I going to do? What's bothering me here? The knight is bothering me because this knight here on g5 could pull some trick, right? So I'll kick it out. And this is where they fall into the missile trap. Look at what a bombshell we have here. Knight takes f7. Boom. A total missile right in the opponent's face. Knight takes f7, and we force our opponent to capture. Why? Because if they don't capture and, for example, move the queen, we take the rook. If they move the rook, we take the queen. In other words, no matter what, since we have a double attack, they have to capture this knight. And now, chess teacher, how do I continue with the trap? By the way, now comes the star move. But I have to thank you for the likes you've been giving me lately. I really appreciate it because I have a great time teaching you all these traps and openings. Now, the big missile here, look, is bishop g6, giving away the bishop as well. First, we give away the knight, then the bishop. Why? Because this queen is now left exposed. And since we're checking the king can't go back to defend the queen. He has to capture here or hide over here. And in both cases, we're going to capture the queen and we'll be a queen up. But careful, here you'll say, hey, chess teacher, great, I'm a queen up and that's it, I've won. Careful. So many people here lose the game with white because they make a huge mistake. And what is that mistake? Well, look closely and pay attention to this part of the video, because if you do this and don't know how to continue, you'll lose the game. So here, notice that a typical move for the black pieces is e5. Why? Let's set up a situation. This rook right here is attacking our queen with an x-ray. Careful, we're a queen up, but we don't want to lose it. So by playing e5, what do they threaten? Well, if we make a stupid move, they simply make a discovered check, even if they lose the bishop, and now they take our queen, right? A stupid move. Another stupid move could be developing the bishop. Why? Because it's the same thing. Check, and now they take our queen. You understand? So many people here say, well, if they play e5 to do this to me, I'll just move the queen and take this pawn. I've seen YouTube videos, I'm not lying, recommending moving the queen and taking that pawn. You lose the game here too. Look, friends, they simply play knight c6, and this queen can't go anywhere. Not here. Here's the knight. Here's the protected bishop. All this is defended. Therefore, you lose the queen. Whatever you do next, for example, knight d5 or even knight e8 could come, and that queen has no way out. You'd have to give it up for a knight. You've lost all the advantage. So, chess teacher, what do I do if they play e5? Well, you have two options. One, the one I call the coward's way. You move the queen back to its original square and nothing happened here. It's true, you have terrible development, but since you have such a material advantage because you're a queen up, it more than makes up for it. You simply castle and continue to game, right? Careful, careful, because if they play knight c6 first here, attacking the queen, many of you will say, well, I'll take the pawn. You're in the same boat. They play e5 now, and you've lost the queen. So careful, that pawn can never be taken, right? So what I'm telling you is, whatever they play, one is queen d1, which is more like the, so to speak, the conservative one, right? You don't want to risk it. And my favorite, which is queen d3, giving a check to the king. The queen on d3 is very safe. Notice that there are only two ways to attack the queen. If they move away, well, perfect, right? But for example, if they play the bishop here, protected from the check, well, you just place the queen on b3 and you're hitting this point, and now you're the ones attacking. Then you castle and you're very comfortable, right? But they can also attack it by playing e4. Now they're attacking you. Look, with the pawn defended by the knight. So even if you want, you can put the queen here, queen g3, and what you're doing here is checking the king so that he has to move. If they want to block with a piece, you just attack it, and you're going to win the piece because it's pinned. So remember this. This trap is impressive, but it has a very big problem. And what is that problem? That many times they don't play d5 against us. When we play e4, they can play e5, they can play c5, the Sicilian defense, but on rare occasions, although they do usually play it, they don't always play d5. So there's a little trick to get them to fall into that trap without them having to play the Scandinavian defense, which is this one here. And so it's thinking, what is our move that makes it most likely they'll play d5? And this move is knight f3. Look, knight f3, they can't play e5 because they lose a pawn. So most players play d5. In fact, it's the number one best move and also the most used move by far. So here, we would simply have to play e4 now. And notice that we're in the same situation. We give away the pawn, and now we'd come here attacking the pawn, and we'd be back in the missile trap. Look, and a big missile right here, right? But what happens? That even having played knight f3, they might not play d5 again and play, for example, knight f6. The best here is d5, but what if they play knight f6, chess teacher? Well, then what we're going to do is first play d3, a waiting move that we're going to make anyway. You remember, right? Good. By the way, let me know in the comments if you like the digital board or the physical board better. I'm going to make videos of both boards because many people ask me to do it digitally since it's much clearer. Let's continue. Here, they can already play d5. Why? Because they're afraid of this e4. And now we couldn't play e4 because we lose a pawn. You see it, right? Now here. Or first they can even trade queens and we lose this pawn. And this is a big advantage for black. That's why they usually play d5 now. Well, if I'm going too fast, I'm sorry. You can watch the video as many times as needed, okay? But this has to be very clear. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to play e4. If they take, which is normal, we're not going to recapture, but we're going to play knight g5. Why? Because they'll say, geez, now they really are threatening to take the pawn. If I play h6, I recapture the pawn and they get the extra pawn back. So what are they going to do? Well, I'll just get rid of this extra pawn I have. And now when we recapture it, notice that the most used move here is h6. And yes, gentlemen, where are we once again? Knight takes f7, fork. And when they take, boom, a missile right here. We're back in the same trap as before. By the way, here's a bonus for when you play online. Knight f3. Okay? To set the trap, if they play knight f6, you have to play d3, right? But many people online, especially in blitz games, have memorized the setup, which is this and this, and for example, castling here, right? This setup for black is very well known, and many people play this piece arrangement, right? Because they've learned it by heart. So here, I'll give you a little bonus trick. This is extra because so many people fall for this stupid mistake. We'll play e4 normally, and when they do this, we'll play e5 because many people pre-move castling here. I swear, I've tried it and it works. And then we just take the knight. And well, if they don't pre-move, no big deal. They move the knight, and we just continue with a totally normal game and a very good position. It's fine, but try it. I encourage you to try it because you'll win so many games with this trick. Look at this, it's very important. We start with knight f3 to make the trap much easier to pull off. They get annoying and play knight f6, so we play d3. Now, if they play d5, we play e4. When they take, we come here. What happens? Here, if they capture here, we do the trap as usual, right? But what if they don't capture here? Of course. Why am I showing you all these options? Well, look, because in chess games, there are as many options as you can imagine, and most channels only cover the trap itself. But what happens, for example, if they come to attack your queen? Right, then you wouldn't know what to do if you were in a game. Well, I'm going to explain why the trap is still on. You have to keep one thing in mind. If you learn all these opponents' moves, if you learn roughly how to set the trap and not just the exact moves, you can do it many more times with great success. You could play, for example, bishop e2. Proposing this bishop trade makes it a normal game, but we want to keep the trap active. How are we going to do it? Well, here we're going to play queen d2. We place the queen in a safer position. Notice that here it's being attacked by the bishop, and the bishop is defended by the knight. So we put it on d2 so that it's nice and safe. And then here, notice that normally they don't want to lose the pawn, so they trade here. Important, okay? Take with the bishop. Okay, this situation is fine. What's the most common move here? H6, and they'd fall right into the trap. But what if they play, for example, I don't know, G6 to fianchetto their bishop? Well, the trap is still off. Obviously, we play knight takes f7, attacking the queen, attacking the rook. They have to take no matter what, otherwise they'll lose the rook. And when they take, obviously, once again, boom, we launch the big missile, and they've fallen for the trap again. The queen remains defenseless. That's why I explain all these options. Unlike other channels that only show you one. Pay attention to this variation because you're gonna love it. Come on, it doesn't matter. For example, knight f6. No matter what they play, we'll set up the same trap, d5, e4. They capture us, right? And we come over here, and you'll tell me, chess teacher, fine if they take here because then we set the trap. Fine if they bring the bishop here, but you're not telling me what if they defend the pawn with the bishop? A supernatural move. How should I continue? Well, here I'm going to recommend the move knight c3. And now you'll see why. A very natural move. We develop another piece, and you'll see it'll be very useful. Simply here, the black pieces can play pawn takes pawn, which is fine. Why? Because now if we take, they trade bishops, and nothing has happened here, right? We no longer have a valid trap here. They kick our knight, we have to retreat. And look, the position is bad. We have an isolated pawn, a pawn down. The position isn't good. All right. So what happens here if they capture this pawn? Should we recapture? Nah. What we have to do is a secret move. The secret move is the following: Queen f3. A very interesting move because it's proposing an attack on the opponent's bishop. And not only that, but also on the b7 point. Look, we attack the bishop and the b7 point. If they defend the bishop, we take on b7, and this is dangerous. If they defend b7, for example, with the knight, we take here, right? So there's only one move that defends both things at once. And what is it? Returning home with the bishop. And now we simply do capture here. And now let's analyze the situation for a moment. We have an abysmal development compared to our opponent, so we are much better off. It's true we're a pawn down, but it's more than compensated for. This position is a white advantage, all right? So here, it's very easy to say, yes, you're much better, chess teacher, fine, but I don't know how to win this. How do I do it? Well, I'll go a bit further and quickly show you some guidelines so you can see. For example, if they play e6, a development move, right? They want to develop their bishop normally. Where are we going to bring out our pieces? Well, my plan is to develop the bishop normally and calmly, and then whatever they do, castle long. Why? because we're placing the rook and x-rays against the opponent's queen. So, look, we could immediately carry out some kind of discovered attack. Well, it's also true that they can cover up. And here, the most used move is knight b7. Very logical, on the other hand, right? They have an extra pawn, they hide back there so nothing can happen, and then we are doing very, very well. But they don't know it. Look, here you have a hidden move, which is queen h3, ensuring that if they castle, we're threatening mate on h7. And it's true that here many people play h6 to kick out this knight. And now the missile trap doesn't come from here, no, but it comes from here. Look, now they're forced to take because if they don't capture and make any other move, we take the queen. Notice that it's trapped by its own pieces. So how do we do it? You have to capture, and now what? Well, we put this bishop in, give it check, take that missile, only move away with the king. And now our friend enters, the queen, who was just sitting there. Notice the opponent was up a pawn, but what good was the pawn if our attack is 1,000 times better? No good at all. We're threatening, man. There's no way to stop it. How could you stop it? For example, with knight e5, besides giving it away, you also give away the queen. And it would be mate in two, for example. Now, when they come here, simply, for example, bishop c5, they have to block, and we'd give mate, right? Or with the bishop, rather. Fine. So if they don't play 95, what can they do? Well, they can come this way. They also give away the queen, right? And they're totally lost. That's why an extra pawn sometimes means nothing if we have an advantage with our pieces. Well, chess teacher, what you're telling me is that here the opponent's only response to defend that pawn is knight f6. And that's not true. They can also defend with a very logical move, bishop f5. They develop a bishop and also defend this pawn. What happens here, huh? Have we lost alright? Is the trap gone? Careful, because here I recommend the aggressive move d3, a very aggressive move that poses many problems. For example, the normal move here is obviously for black to take, and it's also the good one, but we're not going to recapture because that's what our opponent wants. Look, we trade here. They're left with an extra pawn, and they're so relaxed. They threaten our knight, we have to move, and that's what our opponent wants, right? But when they capture here with the pawn, we're not going to recapture with the bishop. Instead, we're going to pull out our secret move, which, if you've been paying attention to the video, you'll already know what it is. Queen f3. What are we attacking here? The bishop first, this pawn with three pieces, and we're also attacking this pawn over here. Multiple threats. Fine, here, if they decide to defend the bishop, which is the most valuable piece of the three, careful, because we're simply going to capture here. And boy, hasn't it happened to me many times that they capture the bishop and leave themselves open to mate in one. Careful, okay? However, e6 here isn't the best move, defending the bishop. Maybe they realize they have a brutal move, which is this one, okay? D takes c2. Here you're all, to put it mildly, getting a little bit scared, huh? They're threatening to take this mate. And not only that, because, for example, look, if we do this, they take our queen here and also the rook. We're in pretty bad shape. Be careful here. You get what I mean. It's a bit scary. What happens next is that if we take the bishop right away, they mate us. This is pretty scary, right? So what do we have to do? Don't worry, chess teacher has the solution for you. Simply bring out the knight to c3, and look, this pawn attacks here and here, it's true, but the knight defends both, and the pawn can't advance because the bishop is there. Plus, it also defends here with the knight and the queen, so they can't checkmate us, right? From here, how would the game continue normally? Now we are threatening the bishop, they have to defend it. The only move that saves it here for black is e6. Very logical, right? So here, how can we continue? Because of course, here it seems like the whole attack is over, right? Well then, what we're going to do here is drop the bombshell. Yes, sir. Knight takes f7. Our missile trap. They have to take it no matter what. Look, they have three extra pawns for starters, but now we're attacking the queen and the rook. And now they have three extra pawns and the knight. But we're going to continue taking advantage of the king being in a bad spot, pinning this bishop and winning the piece. This bishop can't be saved anymore. I'm sure you see it, right? So they can move however they want. It doesn't really matter at this point. Imagine they put a little bit of pressure on this. Bishop to b4, right? They put pressure on this knight. It doesn't matter. We're going to take the bishop. We were going to do it anyway, right? So imagine they make the trades. It's fine. And here, say they recapture here. Many of you would say, well, I'll just take here with the pawn and that's it. But there are many better ways. For example, we come in with the bishop to c4. Check. We have a bishop pair that we have to take advantage of. The king has to go back. Obviously, the best option, if they don't want to get checkmated right away by the bishop pair, is to go back home to king e8. And now, how can we continue? Well, look, we can continue simply with a castling move. It's true we don't have the g-pawn, but we can castle because we haven't moved the king or the rook. Remember, our opponent can. And here, well, they can make 1,000 moves, right? For example, knight to c6 is a normal move. We give a check, they have to defend, we bring in the other bishop, and the pressure is absolutely tremendous. Look, we have a brutal pair of bishops attacking the king. The rook's coordinated towards the king exposed, the queen can come in. And as if that weren't enough, that king can't castle because it's already moved. This position is +4 for white, a totally winning position. That's why I highly recommend it to you. I hope you love this trap and all its versions. If so, I think I deserve a good like. I love it when you give me a like. I love reading your comments. Subscribe to the channel, and I will definitely see you in the next video, my friends. Bye.